Hello and welcome to Click News. My name is Jessica Moore, with the latest in news report. New York City has initiated legal action against more than a dozen charter bus companies for their involvement in Texas Governor Greg Abbott's initiative to relocate tens of thousands of migrants to urban areas. The lawsuit alleges that the 17 bus companies knowingly executed Abbott's transportation plan in violation of a New York law that regulates the interstate transfer of needy persons. Seeking over $700 million in damages, the suit aims to recover the expenses incurred in caring for approximately 33,000 migrants transported to the city via charter buses since April 2022. Filed in state court on Thursday, the lawsuit represents the latest endeavor by New York City Mayor Eric Adams, a moderate Democrat, to address the daily influx of migrant-filled buses from Texas. Abbott, a Republican, has stated that his objective is to spotlight President Joe Biden's border policy. Following the arrival of 14 buses in the city last month, Adams issued an executive order restricting the drop-off times for passengers and mandating prior notification of their arrival. Consequently, many companies began depositing migrants in towns surrounding New York City, sparking outrage among local authorities. Several bus companies expressed surprise at the lawsuit. David Jones, an employee at Buckeye Coach LLC, one of the named charter companies, stated, "We don't make policies. We are just a transportation company." The recent scrutiny of bus companies by the Adams administration was partly prompted by the legal protections granted to Texas under sovereign immunity. An inquiry to Abbott via email remained unanswered at the time of reporting. The lawsuit hinges on a provision of New York law concerning the bad faith transfer of individuals across state lines. According to the statute, individuals who knowingly transport a needy person from another state into New York with the intention of making them a public charge are responsible for covering their expenses or removing them from the state. Muratawada, executive director of the Immigration Coalition, criticized the lawsuit as a diversion from the broader challenges confronting the city in its efforts to support newly arrived migrants. Governor Greg Abbott issued a statement condemning the lawsuit as baseless and suggesting that Mayor Adams lacks understanding of constitutional principles regarding interstate commerce and the right to travel. Abbott emphasized that every migrant transported to New York City did so voluntarily and with authorization from the Biden administration, entitling them to constitutional protections. He warned that Mayor Adams may face legal consequences for his actions if he persists with the lawsuit. Ex-Governor Greg Abbott has announced that since 2022, over 100,000 migrants have been transported from his state to sanctuary cities across the nation, sparking concerns in various northern and western urban centers about a potential surge in criminal activity. New York City has particularly been gripped by this apprehension, fueled by notable incidents such as clashes between law enforcement and migrants in Times Square, a shooting incident involving a tourist, and a recent crackdown on an alleged robbery syndicate. Mayor Eric Adams, a former police captain, drew controversy by participating in the raid, aligning with his tough stance on immigration issues. However, despite these anxieties, recent national polling indicates that immigration ranks high among voters' concerns leading up to the 2024 election. A majority of respondents in one poll correlate migrant influx with increased crime rates, revealing a partisan divergence, with Republicans more inclined to hold this belief than Democrats. Contrary to the narrative of an immigrant crime wave, both national and local data fail to substantiate such claims. Analysis conducted by the Marshall Project scrutinized crime statistics in cities receiving significant migrant populations from Texas since spring 2022, including New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Denver. The findings indicate that there is no apparent correlation between crime rates and the recent influx of migrants. Rather, crime patterns in these cities largely mirror national trends observed in major urban areas. For example, while robberies have garnered attention in destination cities, data shows that the rates of such crimes were already increasing in 2021 and 2022, preceding the migration from Texas. By the end of 2023, cities like New York and Denver witnessed their robbery rates reverting to pre-pandemic levels, whereas Washington, D.C., and Chicago saw rates surpassing those of 2019. Although policing data provides insights into how migration might impact crime, it has its limitations, particularly regarding the immigration status of individuals arrested. Additionally, the pandemic has influenced crime dynamics, with an initial rise in serious crimes like murders and shootings, followed by a decline by 2023. Conversely, property crimes like shoplifting and burglary have surged in many cities, surpassing pre-pandemic levels. City leaders have highlighted various challenges posed by the influx of migrants, including housing and the costs of meeting their basic needs. In some instances, migrants have become targets of exploitation, such as in Chicago, where alleged leaders of a ring were arrested for coercing migrants into shoplifting in exchange for counterfeit identification documents. As the 2024 general election approaches, political tensions surrounding immigration and crime are expected to escalate further. Immigration featured prominently in the recent race to fill the vacated U.S. House seat in New York, with candidates from both parties emphasizing their stances on the issue. Additionally, the GOP-controlled House recently impeached Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas over the migrant influx, a move unlikely to pass the Democrat-controlled Senate. In the past month, the New York Police Department has described alarming crimes involving young men living in the city's migrant shelters. A 15-year-old boy, the police said, shot at an officer in Times Square and hit a tourist. 2 officers were kicked and punched on West 42nd Street. A Venezuelan man oversaw a ring of criminals who rode mopeds and snatched purses and cell phones from more than 60 people, most of them women walking alone. During an early morning police raid last week in the Bronx, Mayor Eric Adams, dressed in a bulletproof vest over a Fendi scarf, joined officers as they arrested 5 people accused of perpetrating the robbery spree. A migrant crime wave is washing over our city, Police Commissioner Edward Caban told reporters hours later. Some of the crimes were captured on videos that have since gone viral, leading Republican politicians and their allies to say that migrant criminals are besieging New York.
5 busloads of migrants coming from Texas arrived at the Port Authority terminal today. One of those buses showed up this morning unannounced.
Again, this shows the lack of coordination and willingness to work with the city of New York by Governor Abbott. He's doing everything possible to make this as disruptive and harmful to the city of New York.
Today, the city welcomed a total of 223 people, including children. Yesterday, 237 asylum seekers arrived, setting a record for the most migrants to make their way to New York City in a single day. City officials say more than 7,000 migrants are now in shelters across the city. Manuel Castro, the commissioner of the mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, has some concerns after learning and seeing for himself that some of the migrants who arrived on Wednesday had on bracelets with barcodes.
Yesterday, we witnessed how they were scanning and removing barcodes from asylum seekers as they were arriving. He's treating people as less than humans. He's treating them as cattle.
Castro says many of the people want to get off the bus in different states, but are afraid to do so, fearing they are being tracked. Meanwhile, City Comptroller Brad Lander says with more and more migrants arriving, the city's resources are being stretched thin.
The administration has submitted emergency procurement requests and is seeking from providers both additional shelter, mostly in the form of hotels.
The Commissioner of Immigrant Affairs confirmed today that the city already has a location for the Welcome Center, where asylum seekers will be able to go and get the services they need. That center, he says, will open next week. As if more buses will arrive tomorrow, city officials couldn't say.